All right, guys, we're back, and we're talking that we were going to continue our blunt trauma. We talked about the automobile accidents last time. Let's talk about the other blunt force traumas that we have to deal with, okay? And again, falls. Very young, very elderly. Everybody's at risk from it. We need to find out what they fell on, what energies were transferred. And again, the common mechanism is blunt trauma, but we will get sometimes some penetrating trauma with that. Anything is working like it's supposed to. There we go. All right. So the trauma from the fall kind of depends on the contact energy and the energy that's transported. Remember that the lumbar spine is prone to compression, especially when they've jumped from a height and they land on their feet, okay, or land on their butt, okay. So take a look at the way that it happened, and from there estimate your injuries that you're going to have, okay. Victims that fall with an outstretched arm, again, think about hand and wrist, forearm, elbow injuries, even up into the shoulder. It can actually separate shoulders that way. As one of our students in this particular class, when I'm making this video, has actually found out the hard way. So, again, in severe falls, again, they have potential for internal injuries, okay, especially falls greater than 10 feet in height, or 3 times their size of their body. 3 times the length of their body, okay? So stop and think about that. So if you got a 2-year-old that fell 8 feet, that's a significant, or 2-foot tall kid that fell 8 feet, that's a significant fall for them, okay? Again, usually what causes falls? Neuropathy, they lose body coordination with their age, they lose the depth perception and eyesight, and weakening bones and muscles, okay? All these things can attribute to a fall injury. Now, when a blast injury, and this is kind of really important on these guys, because then you've got not only you've got a pressure wave, there's a blast wind behind that that can cause damage. They usually got projectiles. They're displaced where they fall, and if they're in confined space, and then the actual heat energy can actually burn them. So there's a lot of things that can happen in the blast injury, and the biggest thing that we miss actually though is that it actually pops the lung because of that compression wave that's sent out from that. Okay, extreme heat and pressure differentiates it as far as an injury. So, and that pressure wave, again, it's superheated hot air, it's moving fast, and it's very forceful, and again, causes damage to hollow organs. Our lungs, our gut, all right? Small intestine, large intestine, all of which are hollow organs, okay? The heart, to a certain extent, is a hollow organ, actually. And then again, when the pressure hits it, again, it goes through, it'll compress it, and then the body decompresses as a reflexive instinct. Not only that, but the wind traveling just behind it can cause debris to be in that, and then those become projectiles, which again, then usually turn into, if they don't break the skin, they can still cause blunt force injury, okay? Again, explosives by terrorists, they usually like to put nails, ball bearings, screws, anything that just enhances the range and the lethality of it, okay? And they actually use radioactive waste material. We call that a dirty bomb. And again, fragments are usually large and heavy, and they're serious enough to cause tissue damage and hemorrhage. Again, personal displacement knocks you on your feet, knocks you on your butt, okay? So again, significant injuries can result from that, especially if they go over something, okay, or under something. It is possible for that to happen. If it happens within a confined space, just remember everything is, again, kind of centralized. It makes the force even worse. It makes the pressure event even worse at that point. Okay? Again, structural collapse is another concern there, and severe crush injuries, and trying to find them might be very difficult. And don't forget about the heat transfer. Okay, military and terrorist devices are designed to induce damage and injury through combustion. So remember, they're trying to burn them because, again, by the way, so if you kill somebody, you only take out one. If you injure somebody, then you're going to take one out along with the 3 or 4 it's going to need to get them to medical assistance. So a lot of your military or terrorist injuries are built actually not, they want to do actually what they want is to kill them and incapacitate them, where they take 3 or 4 people out and then have those 3 or 4 people die. That's what it is. That's the true beautiful military weapon. Okay. Now, again, very cruel, but yeah, very true. You got to remember, you got to think like they're there to win the game, okay? So blast injuries, primary is the heat and explosion. The secondary is the blast projectiles. The tertiary is the displacement of the person and structural collapse. And the last one is other injuries associated with it, whether it be toxic fumes or radiation or something of that nature. So your blast injuries, again, if terrorism is involved or suspected, guys, you really want to make sure you leave as much as possible so that the bad guys, make sure you note where the people were. Be concerned about radioactive material as well, okay? And ensure the police and the bomb squad has declared the area safe before you decide to go in. One new tactic that they like to employ, they like to send in 2 medics, 2 SWAT guys to start dragging people out. And they usually send them into the yellow zone during these events. If you feel comfortable in doing so, I would say with the proper training, I don't have a problem with it. There being the kicker is if they're properly trained. Just remember, the bad guy, he sees 2 guys with guns, he's probably going to think that you have a gun, and therefore he's probably going to have 0 problem shooting you. And we know for a fact that the bad guy's here. Yeah, I've been to that party before. I have that t-shirt. I've had that hangover. Nope, let's not do it. Okay, so what do we do as a role of the paramedic? Again, size it up. Probably a blast injury. We're talking about a mass casualty incident. And again, you're probably going to enter a triage situation with these guys. So know your start triage. We're going to go over that in 3rd semester. But it always helps because you're an EMT. Pull that stuff out. Take a look at it. Okay? And then, by the way, some blast victims may suffer hearing loss or pressure waves. Actually, one of the scenarios that we like to do with you guys later on is we got a SWAT guy who's holding on to a grenade, and if you let go of the grenade, it's a flashbang. And so when you do that, we blind you, and we blind one of you, and we put earmuffs on the other one. So basically, one of you can't see, one of you can't hear. Oh, it's a fun time for us instructors. Yeah, make sure, by the way, make sure you secure their weapons. Make sure they're secured. All right. Problem with blast injuries. Again, remember those hollow organs? Well, it compresses, then it explodes. Well, your lungs especially, you get a lot of pulmonary blast trauma. And again, they're going to have shortness of breath. It destroys alveoli. It destroys that mechanism. It causes a lot of pulmonary contusions in there. Again, really hard. They're going to be spitting up blood. And again, got to go to a trauma center with these guys. Keeping them oxygenated is going to be a not so fun time. Again, supplemental oxygen will help to the areas that did not receive the damage. The abdomen, just remember, air-filled bowel is going to compress and shrink and then going to expand. That's probably going to cause a lot of pain, and it can rupture bowel. Okay? So you could have significant bleeding going into there. Blast injuries, usually they can damage the eardrums. By the way, small arms fire at short range, again, it's going to affect your hearing at that point. Remember, don't forget, with blast injuries, you can have penetrating wounds along with the blunt force trauma of it. So remember to keep that in mind. If you got to encounter large embedded or impaled objects, you need to stabilize them where they're at. Don't forget your burns. Again, make sure dry, sterile dressings. Make sure whatever it is that caught them on fire is out. The military grade stuff uses like a gel where it keeps burning through the skin and can cause major serious issues. Sports injuries, usually because of extreme exertion, fatigue, or direct trauma. And again, acceleration, deceleration injuries, rotations, hyperextensions. So when you're dealing with a debilitating sports injury, again, transport the athlete to the emergency department. Usually your trainers are going to do the initial ones, the sprain, strain, stuff like that. The overexertions, they take care of those. But if it's something like a bone break, again, these are the ones that we're going to have to intervene with. So again, if it's a sports collision, remember your C-spine, and these patients do need to be evaluated. I've had some interesting cases with sports injuries where like kids didn't even know where they were at, and the coach wouldn't even let me evaluate them, and to where the parents were losing their mind, and actually had to get law enforcement involved, and the kid ended up with a concussion, and you had to rapid transport the kid to the hospital. Because, I mean, he went full on goo goo gaga. Okay? So, again, this is something that might happen. It kind of sounds weird, but it does. The good news is in the years, this was maybe 25, 30 years ago, in the recent years, anytime that there's any type of neurological insult, these coaches are getting very severe penalties if they leave the kid in. They're pulling them out the second that it happens, okay? They're receiving evaluations and screens, and they don't get to go back in the game unless they clear that with the medical doctor. And those doctors receive severe penalties if they clear somebody that shouldn't have been cleared. So, again, you're seeing a lot less of that, all right? The good news is they got protective gear on, but, again, remember that the protective gear can also hinder our ability to work. Again, crush injuries, remember this can also happen. Something falls on them, crushes. And again, remember, we get a potassium release for those crush injuries. It doesn't happen immediately. But what happens if you're in there for 2, 3, 4 hours? These are something to think about. You can get these issues. Compartment syndrome is when the blood keeps going into that area. It causes the area to swell. It increases the pressure, which leads into the compartment. And if the injury remains elevated, if the pressure remains elevated in that area, it can actually damage and destroy the tissue. So again, compartment syndrome, again, it's usually because of the blood pumping in there. Again, this is something that requires a transport to the trauma center to where they get taken care of. All right, I know the last video went long. This one went short, but then we got to get into this guy, and that's going to take forever. So we'll get back into penetrating trauma on the next videos. Talk to you then.